Hey, it's Kley. Hope you guys are doing well. Welcome to another video. This is a very exciting day. I have a real-life vintage Fender in my workshop that I'm going to take a look at. This appears to be a 1970s Silverface Fender Bassman 10. We're going to do a kind of a full breakdown, exploration of this amp, see what it's all about. We're going to identify it kind of as specifically as we can. We're going to take a deep look at the circuit, maybe some circuit analysis. And if there's any repair that or technical service that needs to be done to this amp to get it to full working condition, we're going to do all that and more. So if you guys are excited about that, please stay tuned. Let's go ahead and dive in. Now, by way of introduction, I actually don't really know a lot about this amp. It was purchased by a good friend and family member of mine, and gave it to me to take a look at. And yeah, I kind of want to take it apart. I really haven't looked at it very much, but just kind of my initial inspection, it appears it's in pretty good condition. Got a couple of knobs that are cracked, but and there is a hole here in the front grille. But everything else looks pretty good to me, and we're going to go ahead and open this bad boy up and go ahead and take a full deep dive. It's a pretty heavy amp just on initial inspection. It's on rollers, which is really quite thankful and nice. Looking at the front controls of the amp, we've got the classic two channels. We've got the bass normal channel on this side, which has deep volume treble bass. Then this other channel over here is the bass studio channel that has also two inputs with a bright switch, volume treble middle bass, so a little bit extra EQ here with the middle control. And then we got a master volume, so certainly putting it more in the Fender, the Silverface era with that control as a dead giveaway. Now turning it around to the back, we can see it actually has a what appears to be a 3-wire power cord, but it appears to be very old. So we'll just make sure that everything is looking good there. For tube complement, we've got two 6L6s, one 12AT7 phase inverter, and then two 7025 preamp tubes. So a very relatively simple and straightforward amp. Let's go ahead and start taking this thing apart. Okay, this is looking inside of this cabinet enclosure, and you can definitely see it's made out of like a particle board right here. And back here on this back plate, there's like a brace that runs right here, and then like right here there's some kind of piece that maybe was broken off. Yeah, so I don't know what the story is there, but might want to try to repair that, just to make sure that brace is doing something. Alright, I've got the amp up here on the bench. First of all, these are the 6L6 GCs. I believe this looks like a Philips CG, made in USA. And it says 6L6 GC USA. And this other one, I don't see any marking on this front side, but it looks very similar in every aspect. On the back it also says 6L6 GC USA. So I'm going to presume that these are matched. And it's possible that they could even have been original. Not going to rule that out yet. Got these tube shield covers. They are pretty dusty. Got kind of a lot of white chalkiness to them. This is the phase inverter tube. This is an RCA 12 AT7. So definitely a nice vintage tube there. Let's go over here to V2. This is says 7025 on it. I can't quite make out what's on there. It might say RCA. It looks kind of reddish, orangish. Let me compare it. Yeah, you know, I would say it also says RCA. It just looks a little faded. It looks like it looks similar to this first one. Okay, this one looks different. This one says GE General Electric Tube 12AV7 USA. That one looks a little different than the other two. Sockets all look original. I've got a power transformer here. It says KC22798 CSA 827606351. And this output transformer, this is a pretty beefy power transformer. It's a little bit dusty and kind of grimy. There's some indication here that there might have been something dripping, but overall looks fine. Just a little bit dirty. There's some crusty stuff here that's actually crusting off, so it probably just honestly could use a nice cleaning. Then this output transformer is not the biggest output transformer I've ever seen. Okay, there's the marking on it. 021848A 606-3-25. So I'll do some research and maybe put some stuff on the screen to indicate what's going on there. We got two XL6s, phase inverter, and then each of the channels has their own tube. Right here there's a 1/4-inch jack that has a flathead screwdriver socket. That's, I'm guessing, for adjustable bias. Okay, let's dig into this doghouse. I'm very eager to see if the filter caps have been replaced or not. So far, this is a very fine, unmolested vintage amplifier. I'm going to try my best not to molest it myself. I wonder if this doghouse has ever been opened before. Oh mama, we have vintage original caps. They look old to me. It says Mallory 20 microfarad. Made in the USA, 20 microfarad Mallory 500 volt DC. They look pretty original to me. We got some carbon comp resistors. I'm going to test for voltage here, just to make sure I don't hurt myself. No voltage. Use my discharge tool here anyways. That's this guy right here. There's a 1K resistor, 5 watts, in between two alligator clips, bleeding all the voltage to ground, and I'll test it again. Alright, right there you can get a little bit of a look. I'm looking at the sides of these capacitors. Right here, on this one, I see some bulging and a little bit of a tear in the paper. No extreme signs. This one's maybe a little bit bulged right around the circle here of this terminal, but nothing crazy. Looking at this other side now, honestly that side looks pretty decent as well. I'll have a conversation with my friend, the owner, and see what he wants to do about these filter caps. My honest opinion is probably going to be that they should be replaced. Okay, flipping now to the front. This looks to me, upon initial inspection, just first reaction, to be completely original, which is quite thrilling. We've got several Mallory caps, these white ones. Some of these old blue capacitors you'll see in old Fenders, some of these red ones, a lot of carbon comp resistors. I've seen this method of tying that before. The board look like it's humping, kind of like a wave. Just because I'm guessing as it ages, that's what happens to it. But got some old crazy component here. I wonder if that's maybe the rectifier, a selenium rectifier maybe. I'll have to take a look into that. Got some solder to the chassis here. I believe that this it has a standby switch, and it also has a ground switch that down here appears to be connected to a blue capacitor, 0.047 tied to ground. So I'm probably going to recommend we take that guy out. It does have a 3-wire power cord that's tied to ground right here, directly soldered to the chassis. That's epic. This is sweet though. Man, this is thrilling to look at. What a cool amp. Also amazing how sparsely populated this component board is. I mean, there's just nothing to it. It's just dead simple. Very exciting stuff. Alright, these filter caps are going to be replaced. I have some of these little bitty guys. I've actually had really good luck with them. I got them off of Mauser. They're small, but they're 450 volt, 27 microfarads. Have had really good experience with them so far. Now, in replacing these, I guess there's a couple of different ways that I can think about going about doing this. I'm going to go ahead and clip these leads and use these legs to solder onto. But yeah, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to make all these guys brand new, and that should help quite a lot. One quick note, just want to be really clear on which side is the positive side, which side is the negative side. So I got my multimeter out, and I've got it set to continuity of ground, or just continuity mode. So if I put one end here on the chassis and I touch one leg, that if there's no sound, that's positive. Touch the other leg, that means this is the ground side. So I can go ahead and test all these. So I'm guessing these two are in series. So I've got a negative in here, a negative in here, positive, 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 positive. So that just helps me figure out how I need to orient these guys. Alright, I've got the new filter capacitors in. These are 100 microfarads at 400 volts. We're going positive, negative, negative, positive. So that's the first node in series. We've got these two 220K resistors strapping. And I've got 27 microfarad at 450 volts here, 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 negative, negative, negative. So our B plus step down circuit is here, ground here, 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 and here. Overall, this is looking really good. Feeling really good about this. I'm probably going to put a little dab of hot glue or epoxy or something just to kind of stick, maybe some Gorilla Glue to kind of hold these guys down so they're not rattling around so much while this amp is being played. Want to keep them nice and tight. And then this side of this is going to be good to go. We're going to button this up and flip it over to the other side. Alright, I'm going to take my attention now to the power cord. This is my 3-prong power cord. We've got this green wire which is soldered directly to the chassis. That's fine. Then we've got a black, right here, a black wire, and a white wire. They're currently going to both sides of this Carlin ground switch. The black goes to the switch, from the switch to the fuse, fuse to the on-off, then the on-off sends back here to the power transformer. The white side of the power transformer is connected here to the white, which is the other side of this ground polarity switch. So what I'm going to do is take this ground switch out of the circuit. The way I'm going to wire it is the black wire is going to go to the fuse to the power switch. The power switch is already there. So we're basically just kind of taking this little stop along the way out. Then the white side is going to go directly to the white of the power transformer. So just a little bit of a change up there, but nothing crazy. So let's go ahead and get started on that. Alright, just for fun, this is a little blue capacitor. It says 0.047. This was the death cap. I've got my little parts tester here, and I want to test it. It's currently reading at 47 nanofarads, which is like spot on. So these little blue caps are actually quite amazing. I think they have a pretty good reputation for being really good, and so far in this amp, that's what I've experienced. So I'm probably going to test a couple other of these caps, but I'm going to try to leave as many in place as I possibly can. Alright, now I've got this red guy here. I believe this is a coupling cap. And in testing that, I just a second ago got a reading of like 171 nanofarads, which I believe would translate to 0.1 microfarads. Yeah, that's at 165 nanofarads. So I'm going to check the schematic, but 0.1 seems probably fine for a coupling cap. A little bit of a larger size, but I don't immediately sense any terrible danger with that. Okay, this location right here was where the ground switch was. I have now pulled that out, and now in its place I have a double pole, double throw switch. And I'm going to be installing this Pentode Triode switch. So you basically got to find the grid here, which is the screen grid, which is going up to pin 4. We got pins 1, 2, 3, 4 right here. So this provides voltage to the control grid. I got to interrupt that connection. And then again, according to the schematic, it needs to be allowed to either, so this connection point here will either switch down to that resistor or up directly to, I guess that would be the plate. So we're either connecting the plate and the screen together, or the screen goes down to the resistor. Okay, you guys can see the double pole, double throw switch right there. Alright guys, I had a lengthy conversation with the owner, and one of the things that we talked about, this is the schematic of the studio channel, which is this one here on the right, the bass/studio channel. And this channel is awesome. We've got input here, gain stage, tone stack, treble, mid, bass, mid. But this component right here, there's a 0.0047 capacitor from the middle of the treble to the input of the volume. And frankly, I don't understand why it's there. We don't need decoupling. We already have decoupling from the B plus here through these 3 capacitors. So honestly, all it's going to do is unnecessarily trim low-end frequencies, and we already have a bass control. So in my mind, that capacitor is like, it's like one component away from being like a super reverb without the reverb, or like a Bandmaster, or like a Blackface Deluxe non-reverb. So we're gonna just take that capacitor out. Alright, before I continue with anything else, I've got my light bulb current limiter out, plugged into the wall. Got the amp plugged into the light bulb current limiter, and I just want to make sure that everything that I've done up to this point is functional. Specifically this Triode Pentode switch, and I'm also going to probably check around on the bias, make sure that that's all looking good. 356 volts AC there, so that all looks pretty good to me. So far, so good. Turn that off. I don't have any tubes installed. So next I'm going to install the power tubes and going to get a load for the output transformer. Okay, I have 2 6L6 power tubes installed. I have the speaker output jack going into a 8 ohm load on a 2 notes captor load box. The light bulb current limiter is still in place. I'm going to flip the power switch. Okay, the light bulb did shimmer for a second, and now it's quieted down. I'm getting 430 volts DC. I'm going to check that to see what that should be, but so far everything looks really good. Okay, now typically to measure bias, I would go from pin 8 and use a 1 ohm resistor to ground. But this has a kind of a weird thing where pin 1 is just being used as a terminal, and then there's a capacitor, a 0.002 capacitor. So here's the grids, here's the 1.5K resistor, here's the 100K that's coming from the bias supply, and then right here there's the coupling cap coming out of the phase inverter, but then right here there's these two 0.002 caps coming off of each side to go into ground. Guessing that's just taking some really shrilly high end and shunting it to ground just for stability, I would guess. But those capacitors are actually tied to pin 8 because that's a ground location. So I'd have to reroute these caps out of the, it's right here, running, it's connected from pin 1 to pin 8 and then pin 8 to ground. So I don't really want to alter it right now. So I'm going to use the transformer method. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to measure output transformer center tap voltage in both tube plate voltages. Okay, so I've got my voltage drop of 9 divided by my resistance 147 gives me 0.061. That's 61 milliamps on that one power tube. Then 9 divided by 130 is 69 milliamps on the other. So I went here to Rob Robinette's tube calculator website. I selected 6L6 GCs. I entered my plate to cathode voltage of 491, and I'm looking at class AB fixed bias, probably somewhere between these two is what I want. 36 milliamps, so I am way high. So we definitely need to drop our plate current down lower to be closer to this level. So let's go ahead and make some adjustments using a flathead screwdriver to this potentiometer right here. And now what this does is it produces a negative voltage here, and the higher the negative voltage is, the less the plate current is. So we need a little bit more of that. So let's go ahead and tweak that. Okay, I've got the amp on, and I was using my screwdriver to adjust this, and I was watching what happened to the number here. So this is out of this resistor. Right there it says negative 53. Negative 53. But then I go over to this other side. This one says negative 41. So I don't fully understand why that's not changing. So if I go back the other way, negative 42, negative 42, negative 52. It seems like maybe this is sending some kind of balance between the two rather than lowering. I'm going to need to take a look at the schematic again. I think I'm misunderstanding the purpose of this potentiometer. This is the bias circuit. You can see this 10K pot here is basically just a mixer where the negative 48 volts, and let's back up even. So we've got this 50 volt tap here from the power transformer. There's a 1K to drop it a touch, a negative diode to only allow the negative waveforms to pass, so that's negative 59 volts, a DC, because it's been rectified now. It gets filtered, a little bit of resistance, and a filter. So you got negative 48 volts here. Now as I'm looking at it, this 3K and this 15K form a voltage divider to bleed some of that to ground. But this 10K is a balancer, like a mixing pot, to mix and balance between the two signals that go up to the two 6L6s. So I think actually it's the relationship between this 3K and the 15K that would determine how much bias signal there is. So I think what I'm going to do is take the 15K resistor out. That's coming off of, it's on the pot right there. This guy right there, and instead I want to use this. This is like a old pot I had lying around. It actually measures 30K. I'd like to kind of mount this guy right in there. I might just like epoxy it in place actually, and I'm hopeful that if I take the 15K out, that can be my adjustable fixed bias, and that will give me a nice range of bias adjustment. I mixed up some 2-part golf club epoxy. Before that, I scuffed the surface of this with some rough sandpaper, and I did a little scuffing here, and I've cleaned them both pretty thoroughly. And I'm just going to stick this thing right here with that epoxy. And we're going to let that sit overnight. Use a tissue to clean up all the excess, and we should be good to go with that bias control pot. Alright, I have the amp back on the bench. I'm looking specifically at this bass/normal channel. The volume was fine, the deep switch was fine, treble was fine, but the bass control was not functioning. So we're going to test those components, see if we can't figure out what's going on with the bass control. Alright, I had a little chat with the owner, and one of my observations in playing this amp is it's extremely clean. It kind of reminds me of like a non-reverb Blackface Fender amp, like a non-reverb deluxe or a non-reverb bandmaster, where it's just very, very clean. And on this channel I had actually discovered that some of these tone stack components weren't working, and to be honest, I just wasn't super in love with how things were, but I also didn't feel super good about getting in there and rewiring a whole different tone stack, and I just was kind of struggling for a bit. So what I came up with, this is kind of a temporary idea. This place right here, the B plus comes in here, 200K resistors that go to each of the plates of this first 12AX7. So this point right here is where the plate signal exits. There's a coupling cap here that I found that actually needed to be replaced. It was leaking. I replaced it with a .022 microfarad, and then it runs here where it runs to these tone stack networks. It joins up with the bass and treble controls. But I've simply jumpered, so I've taken the two components here that would run into that tone stack, I lifted it out, I've heat shrinked it, and it's just, this end is just floating right here. And this white wire bypasses all that, goes to the input of the volume control. So, we've basically taken the tone stack out of here, of this side. And I want to see if that really will boost the gain, give it maybe more of a Tweedish feel. Might be something kind of fun to play with. You kind of got a Blackface side and a Tweed side, basically. And again, this side is just kind of running wide open. There's no real filtering, no trimming of frequencies. It's just kind of wide open. So I want to try that. This is easily reversible. It would literally just pull this white wire out, drop these two wires back in, and these two little capacitors from the deep switch back into the volume. So it'd be super easy to reverse. But we're going to try that next and see how we like it. Okay. Next, negative feedback. Owner wants to do it. I found a screw hole in here that's unused in this chassis, but I want to drill something new. So we're going to use that one. Got this little single pole double throw switch that we're going to throw in there. Put it in here just like that. Just tuck it right under the lip, right there. Now our negative feedback resistor is right here. So I'm going to run this white wire, which goes to this jack, is just going to instead run all the way out to here, and then this to there. So basically, in one position, it will have the stock default negative feedback, and then in the other position, it will be lifted. So for example, if you wanted to run this amp on this modded channel, that basically is just wide open, and you take all the negative feedback away, that should do a pretty big number on increasing the gain, which I think is one thing that this amp doesn't really have in its stock default voicing. So I'm taking little adjustments, little tweaks to give the amp some more versatility without like drilling holes and doing intense surgery that couldn't be undone. All of this could easily be reversed.
All right, I've got a schematic here for the Bassman 10. I'm fairly confident this is accurate to what I am working on. I wanted to just discuss not necessarily every bit of the circuit, but just what was changed for the current version that I've got. Let's start here on the power supply. I moved the fuse, and so it's on the same line as the AC switch. So the hot line from the power receptacle comes into the fuse, into the AC switch, into the power transformer. Then the other side of the power transformer has a secondary sign to the neutral, and then the green ground. Next, on the filtering section, I actually just refreshed all of these capacitors. I think my values were just slightly different, but overall the same. Then we changed this resistor here to be a potentiometer, so I have adjustable fixed bias. The two power tubes have a Pentode Triode switch, which I discussed, and then the negative feedback resistor here has a switch on it as well. This little change, taking this capacitor out of from the treble control to the volume control, and just making it a jumper. And then lastly, I kind of just bypassed all of the filtering on the normal channel, so it basically is gain stage, coupling cap, volume control, gain stage. So all of this is definitely reversible, but I do think that it makes the amp a lot more usable and versatile for my friend. So let's go ahead and take a listen. Okay, I got the amp here on the bench. We got a number of mods that have been done. This thing is pretty fly right now. A couple things I want to test. Let's start with the Pentode Triode. Now I'm on the bass studio channel. Let's do the Pentode Triode. Pentode mode. Back to Triode. So the Triode mode definitely cuts the output, some of the punch of the amp, but definitely at a much lower, more manageable volume, a little bit lower. So that takes the negative feedback away, definitely a big bump in gain and output. So if you want, you can definitely dial this thing in for, get the volume back to 5, treble up a little, scoop out some mids, up some bass, the negative feedback like it is. Definitely can get a nice... Get some really nice clean tones that way. And then volume all the way up, maybe boost the mids, cut some treble, and flip the negative feedback. So our bass and treble controls are out, it's just volume. Let's start with negative feedback in, volume down. Kick out the negative feedback, crank the gain. Turn the interface volume down a little bit, it definitely would be loud. Awesome. Back to the bass studio channel. Now you could easily set up an AV switch for a totally fat lead tone. Awesome. Well, hey, this has been a super fun project. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. I feel like where I'm at now with this amp, it went from something that was a little bit straightforward, maybe a little bit bland or dull, nothing super spectacular about it. Now I think that this bass studio channel just delivers the goods in terms of a really effective Fender clean tone. This bass channel now is like just a rock and roll machine, tweedy, raw, mid-rangey, and then between the Pentode Triode mode, and then you're gonna get feedback control and the master volume, you still actually have quite a bit of versatility in terms of headroom and overdrive and distortion and how you mix the different channels. I really feel like we've gotten this thing into a really fun spot. So let me know your guys' thoughts down in the comment section below. I'll see you guys again soon. Thanks.